Hey YouTube, this is Mahadev the Thunder Wizard. Today I thought I would talk to you about something that I've known for a while. I was talking with one of my apprentices a few days ago, a week ago maybe, and we started talking about rune divination and what the purpose of rune divination is, and a lot of really good in-depth questions. And I started talking about how divination works, first off, and then what the most important thing you can learn from doing divination in terms of using runes, tarot, and pendulum, and all kinds of other things. But these three, I can definitely say, function this way. And if you can understand this and get beyond the superficial connections with doing divination and using divination tools, you can get to a very powerful method of self-awareness and self-transformation. So, as you know, I am a rune shaman, and you can check on my channel. I have no shortage of videos about runes. You can also go to thunderwizard.com, and if you subscribe at the base level there, which is the Mastery of Shamanism, I go in depth talking about runes as well. Of course, I also do have lockdown package upstairs. We've got rune divination certification course, which I'm basically giving away for almost nothing. So go check that out. So rune divination for me has been really revolutionary, not only in being able to connect to the gods and the ancestors and being able to communicate with them and gain knowledge from them, but I have found surprisingly that it is an incredibly powerful method of self-knowledge and ultimately self-transformation. So, there is no one right way. Let me just say that, in my experience. There really is no one right way to perform divination. There's all kinds of tools, and they all work on some level. If I had to pick one in terms of, pure divination, for me, I would use the runes, because the runes are something that exists in the universe. They are the seed sound, kundalini force, basis of the entire universe. We live in this space-time bubble, which my ancestors called the web of weird. Some people nowadays call it the matrix, which is actually a very accurate symbol. It's not entirely accurate, but it's a very good modern symbol for what we live in. The Vedics called it Maya, which is a goddess, which means illusion. But nowadays we have this, understand that these are pre-Gnostic. The Gnostic idea that we live in this bad, evil illusion that's sort of like a black and white photo of the real thing, and we have to get past this evil, dark, bad earth and get to the pure, spiritual. That's all stuff that really was imposed later. But our pre-Christian, pre-Gnostic ancestors and the Vedics, who never went through that Gnostic period, they don't see Maya that way. Illusion. It is the goddess. So you worship the goddess. What does the goddess enjoy? The goddess enjoys creating. She enjoys giving birth. And she knows that she is hypnotizing you with her creation for one purpose, so that you will experience joy, you will experience wonder, you will experience and appreciate the wonders of the spirit. So the ironic thing is that by truly enjoying this Maya, this three-dimensional space-time bubble that we live in, this illusion, by understanding who you are and understanding your relationship to the universe, this is fun for the soul. This is where the soul goes for an exciting vacation. If you're not having an exciting vacation and your life is miserable and you see this three-dimensional world as a prison or something like that. It means that you have gotten lost in the game and you've forgotten that it's a game. And it means that you are not currently in a correct understanding of who you are and your relationship to the universe. If you flip things on its head, all of a sudden this prison of the matrix turns into this really amazing three-dimensional video game that you can have fun, that you can control, and you can have all kinds of fun in it. So we have tools that help us, and the runes are one, and tarot would be another, and pendulum would be another still. Now, let's get into the mechanics of how it works. The way that divination works, the more that you understand the dynamics of how divination works, the more you're going to get out of it. And the more you'll understand why sometimes your divinations are accurate and sometimes they're not. So here's how things work. Again, I've explained to you. We have a soul. Our soul is infinite and full of bliss and lives in non-defined, true reality, which is no time, no space, no disconnection, no here, no there. You're everything all at once. And so you choose to come here into this three-dimensional space-time bubble, which, if you have looked at some of what's been taught recently in astrophysics, you come to realize that I believe it's only 5%. That everything that you can see and everything that you can detect, including gravity and plasma and electromagnetism, all the things that can be detected or seen is only 5% of the universe. The other 95% is undetectable. We know it's there. We can see and we can calculate that it's there. They call it dark matter and dark energy. Dark is not a color. They don't call it dark because it's dark. People, that bugs the crap out of me. People think it's, oh, your shadow side. No, they call it dark because you can't see it. You can't see it, and it doesn't interact with light, and it doesn't interact with gravity. It creates gravity, but it doesn't interact with time or space or matter or energy or light. So they call it dark because they can't detect it. They can just see the results of it. And that's 95% of the universe. So runes are a window into that 95% of the universe. And that 95% of the universe, I'm starting to now believe, is where the souls reside, where true consciousness is, and it can affect us in ways that we can't comprehend because it's not bound by space or time. So runes are a way to communicate with that. Now, when we incarnate in these bodies, we have these bodies that we incarnate into, and these bodies have sorry, I was just curious to see if anybody was watching. These bodies are the way that our infinite soul, that is part of all that 95% of what we don't know what the hell that is. Our souls, in order to be able to be confined in this bubble of conscious space-time energy, has to have an avatar. Just like when we go online and we play World of Warcraft, not that I've ever done that, or whatever it is that you do, you have to have an avatar that you can manipulate from your keyboard, which will then function within that fake online world. So your soul has to do the same thing. So it incarnates and it limits itself inside of this avatar, the human body. The human body has a nervous system. So that is your instincts, your drives, your desires, fight or flight, etc., the reptilian brainstem. And then you've got this brain that has all these other things where you can have memories, and it's like it's storing all of your emails, on your on your computer or whatever, it stores all the data in here, which you see as memories. And it allows you to experience emotions. It allows you to have thoughts and have an identity. It's your avatar's identity. You can have an identity. You have these senses. You have your eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and then you have your spiritual senses as well, which allow you to interact. Without it, you wouldn't be able to interact here. It would be meaningless. And so among all of that I just talked about, now you have within you 3 selves. You don't just have one self, you have 3 selves. And these 3 selves, again, help you to interact with the various levels of reality. You have your higher self up here, which we call your third eye, which is connected to your pineal and your pituitary gland, and we won't get into all that, but that's your higher self, which has its own self, its own awareness, it has its own purpose and all that, and it's here to help the soul. The soul, that infinite part of you that comes from that dark matter of who knows whatever the hell that is resided here in your heart, and it is like the captain of the ship. And this is like the advisor. The higher self is the advisor. This is the captain of the ship. This is who you are. This is your identity, your soul identity is here in your heart center. And then I'm touching my navel. Your navel center is your lower self. And this is your unconscious mind and your subconscious mind. And this is another entity in and of itself that, you're a community of these 3 entities. You identify with the soul. These other 2, the higher self and the lower self, they have their own purposes. When you die, they go someplace else, and your soul goes to wherever it goes. And by the way, ghosts are not your soul trapped on earth. Your ghosts are your lower self that if you died with, under tragic circumstances or suddenly or violently, or if you died with major unresolved issues, then your lower self gets squished out onto this space-time bubble, and it runs around thinking it's you, but it's not. So people who think that they've talked to the ghost of so-and-so, they haven't talked to the ghost of so-and-so. They have talked to the personality, the temporary personality of the lower self, with all the emotions and all the psychological baggage and all that stuff is still intact, running around. That's why ghosts don't know what year it is. You try and tell them what year it is, they don't know what you're talking about. Every night they do the same thing. They scream and walk down the hall, or they jump off the cliff, or they're trying to get the treasure out of the ground, or whatever it is that they're doing. They're doing the same thing every single night because that's what the lower self is. By the way, this is why it's so important to do spiritual work like meditation, and it's important to have a teacher, and if need be, to have a therapist, so that you can work out all that stuff so that you don't do that. And if you look at people whose lives are miserable, I see this all the time. People who are 40, 50 years old, but they still act like they're 5 years old. That's because their lower self, they're still wrapped up, and in their lower self, they still are 5 years old. Now, they can't get anything done, they're miserable, whatever their problems are, they keep going through the same thing, same destructive relationships, they can't hold a job, or the job they have they hate. They're stuck in their lower self. And so they've forgotten who they are. They've forgotten that they're here, the captain at the ship, captaining the ship and getting information from the higher self, which is sort of like the radio that's telling you where the storms are and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got the guys down in the belly of the ship who are scooping in the coal and all that, and they're doing all their work, and they're communicating with you about the status of the ship. And ideally, you have all 3 of these selves working together with the soul in command. Now, when this communication is running well and your lower self is cleared of all of that garbage, in other words, you don't have like a hamster wheel going on in your lower self because you're still dealing with your mom didn't love you, or your daddy beat you, or whatever the hell it was, past life stuff running around and miserable. If you don't have that going on and you're clear down in your lower self, then what happens is there's a communication with the higher self and the lower self. And this is where you get information in psychic readings, rune readings, tarot readings, especially when you're doing things like working with pendulums. That your pendulum is your lower self. It's nothing other than your lower self. We'll talk about that in a second. So what happens is when you use the runes, because the runes themselves are the sound vibrations that hold together this space-time bubble. This is why speech is so important, because the runes are nothing more than the basic building blocks of speech. And that's why I use the Elder Futhark, because the later Futharks are changing of the original language. So when I talk about the original language, I'm talking about the original Indo-European language that the first modern humans who came into the Northern Hemisphere spoke. And that language that they created was a direct reflection, and the bird agrees here, was a direct reflection of the discovery that our first human ancestors discovered that the universe was made up of these sound vibrations, and that these sound vibrations are happening all the time, and they are maintaining this 5% of the universe that we live in. So by using the runes, which is as close as we can get from a European perspective, as close as we can get to those original sound vibrations that make up the universe, by using the runes we get a window where that other 95% can communicate with us. But the way it happens is it comes to our higher self then communicates it to the lower self. The lower self then communicates it to the soul, which is you, your conscious awareness. This is where that comes from. Now, if your lower self is not clear, if you have unresolved issues, if you have ego issues, if you have, your mommy didn't love you and you've never gotten over that, I'm not minimizing that, or whatever, then what's going to happen is you're not going to know what information you're getting, whether it's accurate or not. So the question came up, and it comes up a lot. And the question comes up, how do I know how accurate my rune readings are? And so the easiest way to know that your rune readings will be 100% accurate is to give readings to other people for a price. In other words, in order to best ensure that you will hear and that the runes will reflect the voice of the ancestors, the gods, is to do a reading for somebody else where they pay you money. Because you have a lower self. Your lower self is your desires. Your desires are going to be in your lower self. Now, since your lower self is the vehicle through which your soul gets information, when you're doing a rune reading, let's get my rune cards here. By the way, this rune card set is by this guy, Mark Graham, one of my apprentices. And you can go to his website if you want to get them. Where is his website? Right here. markgraham.com. Can you see that? mark-graham.com. If you want to get these rune cards, you can get them from him. So, if I was to do a reading right now, I would take my rune cards, or you take your rune staves, whatever. I've also found it doesn't matter whether you use cards or rune staves. It doesn't matter. And I'll explain to you why. So, if I'm going to do a rune reading for myself, because I want to know, I met some hot girl at the beach and I got her phone number, which I didn't. I'm wishing that would happen. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because I can't stand not knowing, I'm going to want to figure out, is she into me or not? So I'm going to do a rune reading on that. And so I'm going to shuffle them. I shuffle them 3 times. I ask Odin for his wisdom. I shuffle them a second time. I ask Vili for his power. These are the three selves, by the way. Odin is the higher self, Vili is the lower self. And then I ask Ve, which is my soul, which Ve literally means soul. And I ask Ve for his spirit. And then I ask the question, is the girl on the beach, what does she think about me, right? And then I'm going to put out my runes. Oh, look at that. She thinks that that I have a good mind, manage. Then I'm going to look at what's going to happen. So where have things gone? There's been good boundaries. That's a good thing. She has good boundaries, so that means we have good boundaries. That's good. How are things going right now at the moment? Relationship. Yada. This means relationship. Wow, okay, so a relationship is trying to happen right now. What's going to happen in the future? Fun. I swear to God, I just made this up. I wish that this were true. I didn't meet a girl on the beach. I wish I had. But means that we're going to have fun. Dagaj means living in the moment, the noonday sun of the soul shining on you. So that would be my... Now, what you've just seen here, by the way, I'll explain it to you. What you've just seen here is my unconscious fantasy. The reason is because I didn't meet somebody. I didn't meet somebody on the beach. And so now you've seen exactly how the lower self controls what runes come out. Now, this is why if you've done rune readings and if you've had that experience, which I do, when I do rune readings for clients, they paid me money to do them a reading. They are amazed at how truthful it is. I'm amazed at how truthful it is. When I do readings for myself, it's 50-50. In fact, I took a reading not too long ago. I had a date a while ago with somebody. The rune reading said it was going to be disastrous, that we were going to fight. The exact opposite happened. I had a great time. It was really wonderful. So the rune reading was 100% wrong. How is that? Why did that happen? Well, because I was taking a reading for myself, it meant that my lower self was engaged in its own selfish agenda. Nothing wrong with that. You can't escape that. So stop trying to pretend that you're spiritual and you don't have a selfish agenda. We all have selfish agendas. You can't escape that. So what ends up happening is that when you're shaking the runes or shuffling the tarot card or whatever it is that you're doing, your lower self, which is your subconscious and your unconscious mind, has complete control over and knows, like my unconscious mind knows where every single card in the deck is, knows where every single one is, and will manipulate. I think I'm just randomly shuffling, but it manipulates exactly where I'm going to stop, and it's going to put it together because it knows, and it's going to set everything up so that the cards will come out exactly the way it has determined. There's nothing magical about it. It's just that your subconscious mind and your unconscious mind knows everything. I don't have the ability because I'm not a savant, but there's a tree outside. My unconscious mind has already calculated how many leaves are on that tree. To the exactly. That's why in Rain Man, when they drop the toothpicks, he can look at them and he knows how many toothpicks are on the floor. It's because he's a savant. It means he's got, it's not necessarily a good thing. You wouldn't be able to function if you had that access. But because I'm not consciously aware of how many leaves are on that tree, my unconscious mind knows. Now it's going to get rid of that information almost immediately because I have no use for it. Doesn't help me function in the world to have all that information. But when you are shaking up the runes or shuffling the deck, your unconscious mind is picking out the exact setup. You don't think anything's going on, but your unconscious mind is. Now, the only question is whether or not your lower self is clear of all unconscious agenda. In my experience, the only way for that to happen is if somebody pays me for my time. If they pay me for my time, then I have no agenda. My agenda's been met. I have time, you're paying me for my time. I don't want anything from you. I don't want your love. I don't want your approval. I don't want to look good. I'm not afraid of hurting your feelings. Now, if you're not paying me money, then I am, because I'm human, I'm going to have an emotional agenda. I'm either going to want you to like me, or I'm going to put my judgment of you in it, or I'm going to want to look good. And lots of times when I'm doing readings for people, because one of the things I do when I take a reading is I say, if you have a question, don't tell me what it is, because I don't want to know. And then I just say, just tell me when you're ready. And they tell me, okay, I'm ready now. So I shuffle the cards, I put it down, and then I start to interpret the reading in front of me, not knowing what their question was. And lots of times I look at it and I'll go, oh my God, this is such a bad reading because there'll be so many reversed runes. But I don't really know what the question is. But that's, if I hadn't gotten paid, then I would want to try and change that so it would look good to them. Now, lots of times what ends up happening is after I read this so-called bad reading, I ask the question, it turns out to be lots of times, sometimes it is really challenging, but sometimes it turns out to be, what they need to hear, and they're like really grateful to hear it. Now, had I known ahead of time, I might have been, my lower self might have influenced the reading. But definitely, like when I do a reading for myself, like this is a perfect example. I just took a fantasy. I want to meet some hot, girl in a bikini on the beach who's a surfer and a model, and I got her number, and so this is like the perfect reading. She thinks that I'm this really, meditative spiritual person. There's good boundaries because, as you know, I had some bad experiences a while back, so she's safe, she's got good boundaries. Oh my God, we're going to get married and we're just going to have nothing but fun. That was absolutely what you saw, was my unconscious mind manipulating the deck so that the reading would be exactly what I wanted it to be. That's the danger. So you've got to get over the idea that just because you're using runes or tarot cards, or especially if you're using a pendulum, that you think you're communicating directly with the gods or the angels or the ancestors or the ghosts or whomever you're trying to communicate with. Whoever it is that's communicating through you is going to communicate through your lower self. It's going to hit your higher self first. Your higher self is going to tell your lower self. Your lower self is then going to tell your soul. In the case of divination, your higher self is going to tell your lower self, which is going to tell your hands exactly which cards to put out, and then you have your interpretation, which might or might not be correct. Because I was doing it for myself, I have an unconscious, selfish agenda, and you saw the result. You saw what I'm trying to unconsciously manifest in my life. You saw it. That's what happens when you do readings. If you do readings for yourself, it's fun. Don't take it seriously, because at least half of the time when I've done it, they've been 100% wrong. Now, here's the greatest, now getting to the point of what is the true purpose of this. Doing readings is fun. Being able to do readings for other people is a service. That's also fun. When you're doing it for yourself, the real thing that you can guarantee is that you can get access to what's going on in your unconscious mind. Talked about a date I had a while back. I did a rune reading because I wanted to know how things were going to be. The runes said it was going to be a disaster and that we were going to fight. We didn't. Nothing even close. It was the complete opposite of that. And so what that told me was I went, I'm unconsciously projecting negativity. I've got fear, I've got doubt, and I projected that doubt into the reading. So you should never make any decisions on a rune reading for yourself. Never. I was talking with somebody a while back, and they wanted to know, because this is something, a lot of people, myself included, a lot of people who are, maybe they have psychic abilities. They want to make their decisions based on this. They want to make their decisions based on runes or tarot or what do you call it? Pendulum. And I don't recommend that. Not because these things don't work, they do, but because if you're doing it for yourself, or let's say you're doing it for somebody else, right? Your boyfriend. Now you and your boyfriend aren't, maybe, here's the better example. You love your boyfriend and you want him to ask you to marry you. You're madly in love with him. Right now you guys are dating, it's serious, but he hasn't given you an indication one way or another, and you're too afraid to say, hey, are you going to marry me or not? So you want to maybe kind of manipulate the scenario and say, hey, let's do a fun reading. Let's see what's going to happen in our future. Are we going to get married? Are we going to, and you're just having fun. You're playing with fire when you do that because you have an agenda. So the reading might come out either as minded as your fantasy, and you'll be imposing a fantasy onto somebody who hasn't signed up for that or isn't necessarily meant for that. Or worse yet, you'll put a reading out which will be your unconscious fear. Oh my God, we're going to fight and then we're going to break up, and it's going to be, when the exact opposite to be the case. That could just be your fear. So the true purpose of doing these kinds of readings when you're not serving somebody else. And for me, if I want to be of best service to somebody else, they have to pay me money, because then I won't have any agenda. I won't want something from them. I won't want them to like me. I won't care what they think. They've already paid me for my time, so it's not like I'm going to get something later, hopefully. I've got what I'm going to get from them and I'm good. Now I'm just going to tell you what I see. You don't have to like it. That's what it is. Sorry. Take it up with the gods. It's not my problem. But if I don't do that, then I'm going to be a human. I'm going to want you to like me. I'm going to want you to respect me. Or maybe I don't like you all that much and I've got a judgment against you and I'm going to put that in the reading. Who knows? So this is what you're getting. So you get a really good understanding of yourself. So one example would be what I shared with you. You've got something coming up. You want to know how that's going to work out. You do a reading on that. Now, you don't take any of it seriously. You look at it and you go, that's interesting. We'll find out. Then, when the actual thing does happen, and then you can compare your experience with the reading. Now, sometimes the reading will be accurate. I'm not saying that I haven't taken readings for myself and they've turned out to be completely accurate. They have. But all that meant is that I was in a state of, a temporary state of clear-mindedness where I wasn't imposing my agenda on it. Here's another problem. I forgot about this. I've shared this with you guys a billion times, but I'll share it again. Way back, it had to have been 20 years ago, at least. Went into the bookstore, the Psychic Eye, down there on in Venice Beach, California. And there were psychics there, and they had booths. And so I went in for a psychic reading, and I think she did a tarot reading. I don't remember. I had no experience in any of it. So I went in and I wanted to know about my love life. Now, she did her reading, and then she started gazing into my eyes and blah, blah, blah. And she started telling me these amazing, wonderful things that were going to happen to me. And she started describing the woman I was going to meet, what she looked like, described what the relationship was going to be like and that we were going to meet very soon. And then she says, now trust me, this is going to happen. I promise you. I'm always right about this. This is going to happen. None of it happened. But what she did that was amazing was that she knew things about me and what I wanted. And she definitely had some kind of psychic connection to my unconscious. So after all of that, I came to the realization that, psychics aren't really necessarily hearing the voice of whatever. They're either doing what, psychics do, which is a lot of times psychics are looking at you and they are reading you. The fake psychics that pretend to talk to the dead, all that kind of stuff. They know exactly how to play you and ask you the right questions so that they can get you to guide them to what it is they know you want to hear. So those are just con people. There's a lot of people who think they're psychics and really they're just reading people. And they're not necessarily, choosing to con you, that they're just believing, their ability to read you, just read you and all that. They think it's psychic, it's not. And then there are psychics who have abilities. The ones that actually have real psychic ability are, almost nothing. And then there's a big chunk of them that do what I described, which is they can pick up from their lower self what's going on in your lower self. Doesn't mean anything. It just means that they have an ability to tap into your lower self and pick up, like this woman did. She was able to pick up on my unconscious desires to a T. She knew exactly, and she didn't know. She probably thought she was getting it from the universe. She was getting it from me. So I tend to have a strong energy. So the other thing that could have happened is that my strong energy might have overcome hers. And she was not knowing what energy she was listening to, and she was having a psychic experience, but because I have a strong energy body. So that's the other thing, and I've noticed this doing readings when I did phone readings, because I did that for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and I started to be able to figure out when the person on the other end of the phone, when their unconscious desires were so intense that it was literally affecting my lower self, which was determining what the reading was. So lots of times you'll give out readings for what they want to hear because they are influencing it with their lower self. I found this to be especially the case when people were asking purely from their ego. Like if somebody really didn't want to know the truth and people didn't come to a reading with a motivation of, I want to know, how I can best be my highest spiritual self. But having, I want to find that guy, or I want my husband to do this, or I want the guy, I'm cheating with on my husband to, you'd be surprised. Psychic readings, the majority of them were women who were either married and cheating, or they were cheating with a married guy, and they wanted to know about. I mean, it was just, my eyes were opened as to how many people are cheating on each other in marriages. It was really quite an eye-opening experience. So, in terms of the three of them, accuracy-wise, when it comes to divination, like specific divination, what's going to specifically happen, my experience is that tarot works best for that. Now, you might say, you're a rune reader, why are you saying that? Well, my experience with runes is that runes are not so interested in telling you what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. Runes are more interested in sharing with you what the energy is of a situation. So for instance, runes can't be used to predict somebody's death because there is no rune for physical death. You can have Berchtana reversed, maybe. You can have Yuhuaj, maybe. But the truth is that all of these represent transitional phases, which could mean anything. Somebody could be dying and the rune will come up, Berchtana, which means that they're going to transform and give birth into another existence. Or it could mean that they're going to recover from cancer and get a new beginning on life. The runes are trying to tell you how energy is moving. That energy is constantly in a fluctual state. So that's where the communication comes from. Tarot, I'm not a tarot master, but in my experience, tarot does better when it comes to telling you what's probably going to happen tomorrow or the next day. The least accurate form of divination of the three is doing pendulum. Least accurate, for obvious reasons. You've got your hand and you're using the pendulum. Yes, no, maybe. Now you are absolutely consciously saying, I'm not moving, I'm not doing any of this. But of course, your hand is moving. Your unconscious mind is clearly making the decision. If your unconscious mind is clear, maybe you're going to get something, maybe not. But truth is, if you're doing a pendulum, it's because you want to figure out, should I marry him? Should I not marry him? Is he going to call? Is he not going to call? And you are going to have a really strong emotional attachment to the outcome. So to me, I don't even mess with that anymore. I mean, I tried doing that for a while, way back when I was doing phone readings, but I just found it to be so easily influenced by either your unconscious or somebody else's unconscious. And, I don't like the idea of what you're really asking is you're asking some unseen hand to move I don't like that. That's just too wimpy and weak for me. So, those are some of my thoughts about what the true understanding of divination is. For me, again, if I'm using the runes for divination for myself, it's really to get information on what's going on with me on an unconscious level. The more information that I have about my unconscious mind, the more ability I have to release myself from any false desires. What I mean by false desires is your soul knows exactly what it wants, and your soul wants what's going to bring you the greatest happiness and the greatest money and the greatest success and the greatest love and the greatest evolution. But you have this human side of you. You have this lower self that's filled with all of these psychological things. Unresolved childhood stuff. You have, instincts. I think all of us, struggle with this. I wish I could be a billionaire, thinking that, money will do it. I was just thinking about that. Was it yesterday or the day before? So I'm here right now in Queensland, Australia, and I'm renting a house. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-level house. It's right across the street from the rainforest, which is overlooking the coast. I can walk across the street and start walking through paths in the rainforest and overlook the ocean. I can walk directly to the beach and go surfing from here. It's just amazing, right? Because of the location and because of the currency exchange between Australia and the US, it costs me, I'm not kidding, it costs me less than what it would cost me to live in a 1-bedroom or even a studio apartment on the beach, or even a few blocks from the beach in Los Angeles, Southern California, Manhattan Beach, where I was before. If I want to go back to Manhattan Beach and have pay the exact same here, I'm going to rent a room in a house, or I'm going to have a studio apartment, half a mile from the beach, if I'm lucky. How does that happen? That happens because I'm following to the best of my ability what my soul wants. Now, if I were to have this, in Manhattan Beach, I can't even imagine how much I would have to be a millionaire easily. I would have to be a millionaire, like a multi-millionaire, to be able to afford this. So, the other day I was thinking about how I could, I was trying to figure out how I could become super rich, and I thought, hang on a second. Is there anything that money's going to give me that I don't already have? And I thought about it and I said, no. I have the equivalent of a multimillionaire in Southern California. I'm not a multimillionaire by any stretch of the imagination now at all. But your soul provides you with that. So that's what I mean about you can get caught up in thinking about what you think you want. But what you think you want isn't really what you need or what you want. The thing to do is to follow what your soul wants, and your soul will give you the equivalent of that, whatever that is. There were times in my life when I had nothing. I was dirt poor, broke as hell. And at one point I lived in northern Idaho. I forget the name of that lake. But I was living on the edge of, literally on the edge of society. I was the last house on this dirt road that was 20 miles from the highway in the forest, and on the edge of my yard there was a sign that said National Forest beyond this point, and my house was the last house that got electricity. And there were bald eagles, there was a stream that went by, there was snow-capped mountains and grizzly bears and moose, and it was just and that was what I wanted more than anything. And there's no amount of money that could have given me that. And yeah, I was dirt broke. You know, so the idea of needing the stuff to be okay, that's an illusion. So that's what can get you in trouble when it comes to doing readings, because your desires will influence your lower self, which will influence your hands, or may even influence the psychic you're trying to get a reading from. Okay? So the best thing you can get out of all of this is to take a look at yourself. Right? All right, so that's it. I don't know if there's going to be any questions or not. I'll go ahead and take a look and see, but I thought I would at least talk about this. Gray Wolf question. Hello, Thunder Wizard. In your opinion, what are the benefits to connect with the client's unconscious while doing a tarot reading, and in what ways can you use that to help them? Well, you should never try to do that. That's not your job. Your job is to be the conduit for the ancestors or their higher guides who are trying to get through to them. So your job is to be clear and not connect at all. They're capable of telling you. If you get some psychic, you know, especially, this is why if you charge somebody money, this is the other thing I've noticed. If I charge somebody money, the ancestors and their guides really come through strong. Because there's also a spiritual thing to this. Somebody wants to hear from the gods, guess what you have to do? You have to give a sacrifice. So them paying you money is their sacrifice to the gods. And it literally opens things up. And when I'm in that state, when I'm functioning as because you're functioning as a priest or a priestess, when I'm functioning as a priest because they've given me the offering, then I get all kinds of information that I would not know otherwise. You know, I don't know where this is coming from, or I just saw a vision of this in my mind, or I just feel this, or are you a blah, blah, blah? And I'll come up with questions there's no way I could have known. And that was because they paid me money, which opened the way and sanctified it. Number one, it cleared me of all unconscious agenda. I don't need, I want anything from them. But it also acted as a sacrifice. Then the gods, follow the sacrifice. And then it opened up for me to be able to hear what's going on. So it's not your job to connect to their unconscious. That's manipulation. That's abusive. Their unconscious is none of your business. So there is no benefit, and you shouldn't do it. Any information you get will come from their guides, which will be their business to tell you or not tell you. Your job is just to tell them what you're hearing. A lot of times there's a lot of stuff you can't tell them. So if you do have the ability to connect to somebody's unconscious, you got to be able to figure out what to say and what not to say. In what ways can I use that to help them? Don't. So you get the point. Don't. Even if you have some psychic abilities, your abilities are going to be no match for the powers of their guides that are going to want to talk through you. So they know them better than you ever could. So there's an ego trap in there that I would stay away from. Yeah. So next one, Jelly Woodard question. Can certain rune or tarot work be stronger on different days of the week based on the Teutonic deity that rules the day? I've never even thought about that. I don't know. If I don't know something, I don't know. So I'm not even going to voice an opinion. I have no idea. There you go. That's the most honest answer I can give you. I don't see any other questions here. We've got, this says 24 people. Let me refresh that here. I think that's probably accurate for this time of day. Yeah, 25 people. Okay, so I don't see any more questions here. So I'm going to do a little business before signing off. If there happens to be a question before I finish trying to sell you something, then I'll answer that. But lockdown.thunderwizard.com. I've just put up a new video. I have reduced the price of the lockdown package. I've reduced it by $100. Reason I'm doing that is because, number one, we are going to start seeing things change in terms of COVID lockdown. It's been a long time. things are starting to shift. Um, but it's been a successful campaign, and as a result, my calendar is getting booked up because I have other clients that I deal with on a regular basis. So the lockdown package was adding more clients, and so now I'm pretty, I need to have more time to do my work as well as live my life. So what I've done with the lockdown package is I'm giving you everything that I gave you before, which is, I'll walk through that very quickly. Everything that I was giving you before. The only thing I'm not doing is I'm not giving you the personal sessions that were connected to the lockdown package. So to reflect that, I've reduced the price by $100. And so what you do get is you get the Find Your Perfect Career video series. You get Celestial Qigong. I mean, that in and of itself is worth it. If you just got that, it would be worth it. You get the Vedic Astrological Certification course, and it's very easy to pass that test. Then you get basically 2 websites from me. You get your own website, and you get listed on my astrology website. The Rune Reading Certification, which same thing, you get a website, your own website, and a rune reading video on my rune reading page. The 4 tools to exit the matrix, which will tell you what you need to do to not be trapped in this space-time bubble that we live in, and learn how to master reality. And then I give you guided shamanic journeys in video form. You just put on your headphones and I guide you through the shamanic journeys. There's a bunch of them. They're very powerful. Then you get the 5 rules to master the matrix, which is probably, there's like 4 or 5 most important things that I teach. That's one of them. It teaches you, you can't master your reality until you understand what the rules are. Once you understand what the rules are, you can literally tell the universe what to do and it will serve you. And then you have the Becoming an Immortal Phase 1, which would be worth it. I mean, the whole package, the price of that would be worth that one thing. And that is exactly what it sounds like. And this is an ancient Taoist, mystical, energetic meditation which allows you to change the energy in the cells in your body to eventually become an ascended master or an immortal. It's probably one of the reasons why I have such good health at almost, I'm going to be 57 in a couple of months. So to have the health of a 25, 30-year-old at my age, that's the reason I spent 6 years doing it. So all that stuff you're going to get. I'm not going to give you the other things I was giving you, which lasted for at least 2 sessions. I'm not going to give you those because I just don't have the time. So you get to save some money, and anyway, you can go watch the video and check that out. And of course, if you want to support the channel, go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe. Subscribe even at the lowest level. You will get access to very powerful rune and energy work stuff. I talk about all kinds of stuff when it comes to runes, since we're on the subject of runes. Courses.thunderwizard.com will get you access to the other stuff like books, DVDs, etc., etc. Of course, subscribe and hit the bell button, and then you'll go to heaven. All right. If there's any more questions, I'll take them. Let's take a look here, see what's going on. Jelly Woodard question: does the lockdown package include the? Yes. This is what the links are there for. If you follow the links, you will know the answer to that question, and the answer to that question is yes. See what else? Madge Kieran. All right, saying some nice things. Thank you. All right, that's it. No more questions. So I'm gonna get on with my life. I've got a bunch of stuff I got to do today, but I thought I'd check in with the channel and say hello and share my thoughts about divination. All right, I hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy, and talk to you all later.